but now he never is given the opportunity by his handlers to say what he believes. They've taken a page from the 2020 campaign playbook. Back then, the pandemic allowed for interviews in virtual realities via Zoom from his Delaware basement. We'll get to the polling with Dr. Lauren Wright, who teaches at Princeton University, in a minute. Niall Stanage, White House columnist from The Hill, is with us now as well. Niall, first, you forget the White House for a second. There has got to be a lot of senators who are up for re-election, Democrats in swing states. I'm thinking Arizona, New Hampshire, and the like, and a lot of members of the House of Representatives from swing districts of the Democratic Party who just breathed a giant sigh of relief.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this respite on Title 42 is very, very important to the Democratic Party, I think. You know, the president was on the horns of a dilemma there, in the sense that if he pressed ahead with lifting Title 42, he was going to run into a lot of opposition from his own party. But if he himself had changed his mind, he would have run into similar resistance from the left and from progressives and from the activist base. So this situation where nothing happens, but he can blame the nothing happening on a judge, that's a good position for him.
Yeah, especially a Trump-appointed judge. It gets even better in that case. Lauren, to you, help us understand really where the floor is. When someone's at 39% approval ratings, can it get any worse?
I mean, it can, theoretically. I don't know if we've seen in recent history much worse than this. And the reason is because Democrats, by and large, will always be somewhat supportive of the president. But now what we're seeing is among every group, Republicans, Democrats, and independents in particular, those ratings are lowering seemingly poll by poll. And so it's very, very difficult to get out of this sand trap. But I think, Leland, you and I will disagree on this, but I think that it's actually a good thing when presidents are prepared with their remarks. It's a good thing to some extent when they're managed. And let Biden be Biden, I think, is not going to solve the approval issue.
Fair enough. I guess the point, I guess the question, not even the point, Niall, would be if sticking to the prepared remarks is not working, what do you have to lose trying the opposite from the White House's perspective?
I guess that's true. I fear we're getting into a situation where your guests are ganging up on you here, Leland. But I mean, I think that the point
I can take
is
it, don't
not,
worry. I'm used to it.
I think that the point is not so much, you know, people always say in politics, oh, the messaging is the problem. You have inflation at its highest rate in about 4 decades. You have the war in Ukraine. You have a nation still pummeled by the COVID pandemic. You have the controversy over Title 42. What is the effective message that is an antidote to those political problems? To let Joe Biden be Joe Biden? I don't know that really goes to the heart of the problem at all.
I was going to say, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, that seems like a wonderful day in Washington. Thank you. Lauren, to that point, so much of that may be the message, but also how you convey to the American people you understand what's going on. I'm thinking Bill Clinton, I feel your pain. Now we listen to the Interior Secretary, appointed by President Biden, serves at his pleasure, about gas prices. Take a listen.
Do you believe that gas prices are too high?
I think that Americans are still recovering from this terrible pandemic, and there are a lot of other world events that are making things difficult for all of us.
So it sounds you're unwilling to say that gas prices are too high.
And we've almost heard this from the president, too. Ultra MAGA, MAGA King, Putin price hike, on and on and on and on. Would the polling be different if the president took the tack, look, I know things are bad. It's not necessarily my fault, but it's my responsibility. I'm here to fix this, and I understand how much you hurt. Does that do well in polling?
I mean, in a survey experiment, perhaps, and I do a lot of those, certainly, but in real life, no. I mean, the answer is that it's probably very difficult to turn around at this point. But, you know, the president might do better to take some ownership over these policies. You know, a stimulus of the size that Biden put in place when he came into office, and it was very popular, the COVID relief stimulus. There were even warnings from Democratic economists at that point, from the Obama administration, that would create inflation. So it would help maybe to tell the public that this is a possibility and then defend your policy.
Right.
Tell people why you think the stimulus outweighs the possible inflation, but don't pretend like you're surprised by it or it's someone else's fault.
Yeah, you're thinking Lawrence Summers, Austin Goolsbee, big names from the Obama administration who talked about exactly the issue, Lauren, you're talking about. And there seems to be this divide right now among Democrats. You've got some who say we need to take more credit for our wins and some of the stimulus that Lauren talked about. This from the White House today, statement by President Biden. Americans across the country are back to work at a historic level right now. Workers in Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin are less likely to be unemployed than in any other time in record. This job creation is no accident. It's a direct result of my economic plan. 13 of the 17 states, Republican governors, many of them, their House and Senate, state House, state Senate, also run by Republicans. If the best you can do is unemployment's low in Republican states, what do you have?
Well, I mean, I take the point that those Republican states are the vast majority of the ones that he named in his statement. Now, in fairness to the White House, the national unemployment rate is what, 3.6%? The White House always draws a
phenomenal.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think to Lauren's point as well, one of the difficulties here for the president and for the administration is that they're trying to make a forceful but nuanced or divided argument. They're trying to take the claim and credit for things they have done that have worked, but they can't do so in a completely emphatic way, because then that ignores the pain that is caused to voters by inflation and by high gas prices and by these other things that are pressing in. So it's this odd combination of I feel your pain and you've never had it so good. And that's a very difficult balancing act, or very difficult needle to thread.
I got literally like 5 seconds, Lauren, but I'm trying to figure out how forceful yet nuanced arguments work for Republicans, Democrats, or Smurfs when you got gas prices near $5 a gallon.
Well, I'll just round it off and say that even with an economic message, the job is just too big not to be taking advice from advisors. So if the Biden administration wants to answer questions on the economy, or the president wants to take questions, I hope he is getting advice from top economists that work for him and not just going off the cuff and off the top of his head. It would be not going to help anybody.
It would be so much more fun that way.
For you, it would.
Especially for Niall and I.
Love that. I know you both would love
Lauren,
that, but I don't know if it's always the best for the country.
Well, you may be onto something. We got to run. Thank you both. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.